Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Let's take a quick look at the Bitcoin markets. The sell-off continues. In my last video, I was talking about some key levels of support that needed to hold. They were must-hold levels in my opinion. We have since broken them. Over the weekend, we saw a pretty big break of that 7,300 level. And since then, the weakness has continued. So I'm going to go over the chart, what to expect near term, some levels that I'm looking at, and just some of my thoughts in terms of the bigger picture, right? Are we still in a bear market? Was that the start of a bull trend? And just some thoughts around that. So first, let's take a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart. We've been watching this rise for the last month and a half or so, going up to 48%. It did peak recently at around 48.7%. Since then, it's continued to slide down a little bit. And there are some reasons why you're seeing Ethereum have a pretty good move off of the lows at a key support level. So that's what I'm going to be watching here, as well as some of the other alts that were just so beaten up, so oversold versus BTC. And we're seeing a little bit of counter trend reversals. And so I've been looking for some alt outperformance here in August. But of course, a lot of that's going to depend ultimately on what Bitcoin does overall, as it will absolutely drive the overall sentiment of the market. So let's take a quick look at Bitcoin first. So this is the daily chart here, and you can see we broke the 10 EMA about a week ago here on this very big volume reversal day. And that was right at 7,800. That was the first watch level. Below that, I was looking at 7,500, and then the 7,300, which I said was kind of a must-hold level. And just to recap briefly, you guys know I've been watching these different retracement levels on the Fibonacci price. Let me take the volume off of there briefly. And you can see we had the first test of that 7,800, which was the 382 retracement level. That was the 7,500, excuse me. And then we went down to the 50% retracement, which was right around that 7,300 level. Alongside this Fibonacci retracement level, this was a key support zone that had held as a base here following that first leg up, which then served as a good launching pad from which we went up to 8,500. But then after that, it's just been reversing and just breaking right through all of these levels. And so this 7,200, 7,300 zone is now going to be resistance on any bounces to the upside. You can see the 10 EMA is quickly moving lower now. And even if we saw a bounce here, this level going into 7,300 is what I'd be watching. The 10 EMA, the exponential moving average, would quickly catch up to that 7,300 level, and prices would meet there. And that's really the level I'm going to be watching to pay attention if we see a little bit of a bounce here. Now, in the big picture, though, we had a long streak of down days, 7 consecutive red days in a row. We had one green day yesterday, but it was very lackluster, hardly constituted a bounce. It was just a barely closed in the green. And here today, you can say this is a big bearish reversal candle following that green day, continuing to downtrend. Now, looking at the support levels, let me clear that Fibonacci level. Now, looking at support levels, the level I've been watching here, of course, and everybody knows, is the 6,800 zone, which was the breakout point around that inverse head and shoulder pattern that we saw form over the course of June and early July. Now, we have fully retraced that. That is not positive. The fact that it came all the way back down, what we really wanted to see was a higher low, ideally around that 7,300, and then a break higher. Now, it's not the end of the world that it fully retraced it. It's not uncommon to see these big reversals get tested and then see if that's going to make a higher low and go from there. But the fact that it's pulled back, also in light of all the positive news that we've seen here, we've seen so much news around the NYSE, we've seen news around institutional demand for crypto, custodialship, just so many things, the Backed app, right? But in light of all of that, the prices just continue to sell off, and that's not positive. I'd much rather see the opposite, where you're seeing a lot of bearish news, a lot of FUD, and prices maintain or rally in spite of that. That's what the scenario that we want to be seeing here, and right now it's the complete opposite. So we're seeing a retest of this 6,800 level right now. Going to watch how this daily bar closes. There's about 2 hours left at the time of this recording, so not a lot of time left at this moment. If it finished this way, it would be very bearish. But the fact is, in the shorter term time frames, we are hitting a little bit of oversold levels, but not extreme. It's just been a little bit of a relief rally. You can see here, we've just been bouncing into the 10 EMA. That's the RSI on the 4 hour cool off. Another leg down, a bounce, another big leg down on Saturday. And since then, we've just been chopping around here, but today we're starting to roll over a little bit, and RSI is starting to dip sub 30 on that 4-hour chart again as it enters this support zone. And so until we can get back above the 10 EMA on that 4-hour and start closing above that, the momentum just is very strong to the downside. Now I am looking for some oversold bounce plays, but like I said, going into that 7,300 level is going to really be the key test, the first test, as to whether or not this was the low, a higher low, or if this was just a bounce into that and then another leg down. Now below 6,800, a lot of people are still saying, oh, as long as we hold 6K, it's going to be fine. I'm not so optimistic, because if it breaks below 6,800, even 6,700, and it starts to retest this 6K zone again, that's going to be another test of a long-term support level, and so many tests in a row will likely not hold this time. So if we have to test that 6K level again, then I will be looking for new yearly lows that would most likely undercut this 5,800 low that we saw set in end of June and early July. Now, the fact that we had two very strong weekly candles and that was followed by a big bearish engulfing candle on this weekly chart is not positive. Now we're seeing some follow through to the downside. We've got a long ways to go before this week ends, and so that's going to say a lot. But the fact that we've had this big reversal is not positive. 6,800 is kind of the battle line, if you will. In my opinion, that's the last stand. And if we drop below, then I'm going to be looking to make some short entries on any bounces, and I'm going to be playing the downside until we see a solid reversal back to the upside. Now, with that being said, like I said, it's not over yet. 6,800 could hold, and in fact, I'm continuing to look for some bounce here, some oversold condition bounces, and in that environment, I'm going to be looking to continue to make trades on the alts. I made a few trades here on some of these altcoins over the weekend. Some of them continue to be strong. We saw some news-driven names like Ethereum Classic just continues to move strongly. But let's take a look at a few other names that are setting up here at these lows versus Bitcoin. And so I'm keeping a really close eye on some of these. So first off, Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is a good bellwether altcoin for some of the rest of the alt market versus Bitcoin. You can see here on this ETH BTC chart, we've had a pretty good low set here, and we're since been rallying, and right now it's putting in a nice little flag formation, just sitting real tight versus Bitcoin, not selling off versus BTC in light of the continued sell-off that we're seeing in the overall market. And if you zoom out a little bit on the daily chart, this is a long time low. Back here in March, April, we set a low here, and you're seeing we're retesting this low right now. So we want to see some follow through from this. It's a key support level. If it's just a bounce and really rolls over and breaks below that, that's going to be a real bad sign for the overall alt market versus BTC. And if Bitcoin continues lower, the alts will underperform. It's going to be a double whammy for the alt market. But for now, in the near term, this is setting up something I'm keeping an eye on, because I'm expecting the alts to outperform just because they're just so oversold versus Bitcoin. Another one to watch here is EOS. Now, EOS has continued to march higher. You can see it's making these series of higher lows so far, and now in this most recent leg, just kind of sitting tight, breaking out of this little bit of a flag pattern here just today as Bitcoin sells off. EOS is holding its own, trying to outperform slightly. So this is definitely one on my radar right now. It's looking pretty good here near term, but it is testing some resistance right now. So I want to see some follow through, especially if Bitcoin moves higher. But this just goes to show you that some of these alts are really bouncing off of these lows. Looking at the daily chart, however, it's the beginning, the very beginning of a potential bounce. You can see it's just now getting above the 10 EMA and really only just bouncing into resistance here at this point. You can see this closing basis resistance on the daily chart. We're just now testing that. So getting above that would be a first good confirmation that we're going to start to see some more movement in some of these alts. So EOS is definitely one I'm keeping an eye on here. And finally, Ethereum Classic, very strong move. We saw that reaction off of the Coinbase news saying they're going to start enabling deposits this week, followed by trading. And so you're seeing some front running, not unexpected. That's usually what happens. You see the front running, and most likely it will be a typical sell the news scenario. So going into the actual trading event, I expect to see some profit taking and some pulling back on Ethereum Classic. But if you've been in this trade over the weekend, you've had a very nice run. It gave you that initial pop here, and this was a very quick move on the Coinbase announcement. This move really was 10 minutes long, and it then gave you a nice consolidation on that hourly chart, and this was really a good secondary entry point. Once it broke out of this range here, that was the entry point there, and you can see we've had a pretty decent run since then. So going back to the coin market cap, you can see here, just taking a quick look across the board, the last 24 hours, we've seen some sell-offs continuing across the board. Some names are outperforming, like we saw Ethereum Classic. There's a few other names that are not down as much as Bitcoin, but certainly not any huge moves across the board. It's mostly a sea of red out there as the sell-off continues. There's always going to be names that are pumping, but for the most part, the alts are certainly taking a hit. The coin market cap continues to sit right around that $250 billion mark, off of that high from 300, and so just still sitting in that little bit of a range. Ultimately, it's going to depend on what Bitcoin does here in the next week and ultimately in August. Now, August is a little bit of a juncture for the crypto markets, in my opinion. We've seen the hodlers just really have a big impact here, especially the altcoin market over the last several months. And last month we saw Bitcoin have a pretty strong move, yet most of the alts did not participate because a lot of that move was on the back of ETF news and anticipation. And so you saw a lot of rotation out of the alts into BTC. Now that Bitcoin's pulling back, you're seeing the alts take another hit. And so I'm seeing a lot of tweets, a lot of comments, and people are certainly in the despair mode, the depression. The bulls are not enthusiastic one bit in terms of what's going on with the crypto markets, and that's just a sign of the long-term bear that we've been in. It's been 8 months, which is a very long time for crypto in terms of cycles, and we just continue to be in this broader downtrend. If you look at the weekly chart, that just shows it very much. And the fact that we had that nice low in early July off of that 5,800, it had a very strong move, gave a lot of hope and encouragement back to the bulls in terms of, hey, maybe that was it, back to bull mode. But we certainly never confirmed by breaking that broader downtrend on the weekly. So we still have that possibility. If we do set a higher low on the weekly and continue higher, then the momentum will shift again. And it seems like we're just one news article away from that big move up or down. It just seems to be the case with crypto right now. If there's any kind of news around an ETF, any kind of positive action, then you will likely see a very strong move in Bitcoin, and the sentiment will shift just like that. But on the other side, if there's any kind of continued bearish news or anything, Bitcoin just feels very vulnerable right now. That will likely send another leg down, another sell-off in the markets. And so it's just very sensitive right now. Certainly the momentum has shifted back to the bears. I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce here in the near term, but because we've retraced so deeply, I'm absolutely taking a much more cautious stance than when the pullback was above that $7,300 mark. So just something to keep an eye on here, guys. I will keep some updates coming throughout this week, and we will likely do another live stream tomorrow or Wednesday. So look out for that. Appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, happy trading, everyone.